Talking Transport, the podcast from the Transport Network.
Wherever you are in the world, welcome to our latest podcast from Smart Highways magazine. And if you're visiting Singapore, this is your chance to take a break from commenting to everyone you meet about how amazingly hot and humid it is here and spend half an hour talking transport from the ITS World Congress.
Coming up in today's edition,
we look forward to a flying taxi demonstration.
You need to have the trust of the people and of the authorities, so we are convinced that we have to start with pilots on board.
Discuss how to plan for the mobility of tomorrow.
Where we used to say we know the future and we plan for it, now it says we know what we want to achieve and the future will be different, but we have a flexibility there.
And talk collaboration possibilities in Asia Pacific.
China is now a major player in ITS, and this is one of our main opportunities of interacting with our Chinese colleagues and forging closer ties with them for the future.
Plus, of course, Eric Sampson's guide to Tuesday's must-attend sessions.
This is all about harmonisation. How can we get legislation that works for all of those countries?
We'll also have a taste of the opening ceremony.
Talking Transport, sponsored by AGD Systems, Coda Wireless, here, Yanoptic, PTV Group, Swarco and WSP.
So after a gentle start to the 2019 ITS World Congress with the ASH2 session and other interesting special interest sessions yesterday, plus of course the opening ceremony and the opening of the exhibition, today the doors are flung open wide for the event here at the Suntec Centre in Singapore, and Professor Eric Sampson is your trusted guide to which sessions you have to go to, because let's face it, we've got a floating platform with demonstrations taking place, actually looking at Singapore's skyline outside in the heat. We've got all the exhibition going on, we've got other demos and other conversations taking place inside rooms, and we've got innumerable sessions, it seems. So how on earth do you pick out the right ones? Eric Sampson has been involved in putting together the programme, so he knows more than anyone which ones are really must-attend events. So Eric, what's taken your eye on a Tuesday here in Singapore?
Thanks, Paul. Well, this is very much a personal choice. I must stress that. The fact that I don't mention someone doesn't mean the session isn't any good. But in the same way as I prefer Schubert and Beethoven to Brahms and Liszt, that's my preferences. First of all, on Tuesday is the ITSS cybersecurity session. This is one of the associated events. It's been organised for some time now by Dean Zabrazak from Australia, and it's a gathering of 12 or so cybersecurity experts to debate the big issues. We've also got the MASS Summit, the Mobility as a Service Summit, and that's also running for half a day. I like Executive Session 2 on legislation. Now, don't be put off by the title. Legislation, yes, I know it can be boring, but when you think about legislation for automated vehicles, you realise that Japan, China and Korea have got one set of legislation for the whole country. America's got 48 or 50, depending how you count, because they vary between the states, and Europe's got getting on for the same number. This is all about harmonisation. How can we get legislation that works for all of those countries? I also like Special Interest 16. This is business models for highly automated vehicles in the freight and logistics area, and this is run by my good friend Željko Jeftik. And there's one, number 21, is about dynamic space charging. Dynamic meaning you vary the charge depending on what's going on. So it's all about variable parking. If you park at 11 o'clock at night when nobody's there, you'll pay very little or nothing. Park in the middle of the rush hour and you'll pay a lot more. And two of my colleagues, Darren Capes, Carol Schweiger, two of my rapporteurs, in fact, will be organising that session.
Eric Sampson is your trusted guide to the various sessions at ITS World Congress 2019, and he'll join us on tomorrow's Talking Transport to look ahead to some of the sessions that have caught his eye on Wednesday.
From the ITS World Congress in Singapore, this is Talking Transport with Paul Hutton.
So on the back of all the things that Eric has promoted for day one proper of the ITS World Congress 2019, there is one one other must-see event, which is the flight of the Volocopter over the Marina Bay area. And I've been joined to look forward to this by Alex Sozel, who is the founder of Volocopter. This is a huge moment. We're going to see a flying taxi, basically.
Yeah, so we are presenting here not only our flying taxi, so we are presenting the first Voloport, so the first takeoff and landing terminal for a flying taxi worldwide. So this is really a big event for us, and also happy to fly our air taxi here in urban space with the pilot. And we are happy that our aircraft works really good in that climate condition with this very high humidity and heat. So we have really a lot of success here.
Now explain to me the concept behind it.
So it's from the technical side, it's a large flying drone, so we can fly also autonomous. So we had the first test trails, for example, in Dubai 2017 as a fully autonomous version. But we are sure that when we start with operations with air taxis, you need to have the trust of the people and of the authorities. So we are convinced that we have to start with pilots on board. So we have a pilot and a passenger.
We see this demonstration on Tuesday at the World Congress. This is a world first. When will we see these in commercial operation? How long will it take from here on in?
So we have, since July this year, we have a regulation baseline published by EASA for commercial flights with electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft in urban space. So now we developed our new product. It calls VoloCity, based on this new certification baseline, and we need another 2 years to bring this aircraft to certification. But we have to start now to look for the infrastructure of these things, because if you have a certified aircraft, you need also landing and takeoff spots and where your customers are jumping into the aircraft. So we are starting now to find the first spots where we can start and take off. So
this is your brainchild. How long has it been in the making?
We started in 2010 with the first idea. 2011 we had the first manned flight with an electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. We were the first worldwide, so we are also pioneers in aviation with that. For the port, so I think I started three and a half years ago to have the first ideas how to build up infrastructure like the port here. And so we published last year our ideas of a network of infrastructure over the city. So it's I think for the port here we need more than 3 years, but it's a hardcore project for I think half year when we started say want to build up a port like this here. So it's a really short period from designing and producing it here in a really short time to bring it to ITS.
What's the public reaction to it? Because I can just hear people being worried about safety, being worried about when they're in autonomous mode, being potential terrorist weapon. So how are you getting across the benefits and allaying people's fears?
On one side, the new regulation published by EASA, it says that the air taxi who operates in the city has to be as safe as a commercial airliner. So from safety, it's set by the regulators, it has be just the safest way you can do it. So the people don't have to have fear about the safety of the aircrafts. But on the other side, it's very important that the people who lives in the city and don't use it accept it also. So it has to be really, really quiet. This is one of a task we have on the top of the list of us to have the quietest aircraft you can have for urban space. And on the other side, it's not only about acceptance of the people who live there or who use it. It's a cultural acceptance if you want this, and we are sure that it will be a experience for the people and they will love it. So you have now a new transportation mode for daily trips, and you sit in and you can see your city from above, and this will be also a little bit a new feeling of how to live in the world to use these kinds of new transportation. So it's also an emotional thing, and it's going in really beautiful future with that things.
And finally, on Tuesday at the World Congress, when people come down to Marina Bay, what will they see?
So they will see the first Voloport. So they see really a terminal, how you will treat it as a customer. So we want to have a seamless experience. You can we have a check-in with biometric things, for example. We are testing different kinds, how you can have really fast access to jump into the aircraft. And on the other side, when the weather is not our enemy, we will have the first manned flight of an air taxi in urban space worldwide, and it's in the beautiful setting here of Marina Bay, so it will be a great day tomorrow.
And you're really, really, really sure that I'm not allowed to go up in it?
Yeah, I'm really, really sure. So you have to talk with the authorities here. If you're often in Singapore, you know it's not so easy, but everything is based on safety also. And for sure, we want to take our passengers with us when we have the first commercial certification for that.
Okay, well, I'll be first in line when you have your first manned press trip. I'll be first in line to be in it, Alex. Congratulations on the most exciting demo, I think, here in Singapore this week. I look forward to seeing it on Tuesday at the World Congress.
Thank you very much for that.
Talking Transport, brought to you thanks to WSP, Swaco, PTV Group, Yanoptic, here, Coda Wireless and AGD Systems.
If you're listening to the preview podcast on Talking Transport, you'll have heard me talking to Rehan Mian of WSP about future planning tool. Well, I've been finding more about it today here in Singapore, and I've been joined by Dirk van Amersfoort, who's Research Director of International Transport Studies at WSP. Fantastic, fascinating stuff, Dirk, on the system dynamics. In a nutshell, from what I've sort of gleaned from this, the more into the future you start to predict what's going to happen, the more variables there are, and therefore the more difficult it is to kind of pin down what's happening. You've built a tool to kind of help you with the decision making.
Yeah, so what the tool does is follow processes over time and how they interrelate and how causal relationships are. So they are valid from the beginning, but they may get a different strength over time as markets mature or as markets fail. So this tool really helps us to follow how new markets for mobility can develop over time, and how we can influence them either with policy or with the features of a new product. So it could be, how does battery price affect EVs, or how does cost of CAV affect uptake? And in that process, we can talk with others and we can work with stakeholders to have a shared vision of what are assumptions and where are we insecure about assumptions, and see what is really important. What factors with small change have big effects, and what factors with a lot of change are really not that important. And from that, we can make better decisions already now for a future that we want.
So I guess that's the issue, is that with a lot of ITS, what we've done in the past is kind of invent solutions to react to what's happening. What you're doing here is actually allowing us to say, right, if this happens, this is what the result is going to be, but we actually want result B, and so we have to change these variables and make policy and implementation to reach the actual goal that we want to achieve.
Yeah, so I think that more and more public agencies are redoing how they're working, and start with a vision. Could be a vision 0 on traffic safety, for example, but also we want congestion to be at 1992 levels instead of where we are now, and really plan from knowing where you are now and what you want to achieve, and start planning the future backwards almost. And what we're helping doing is understanding what are processes along the way that might get you off the path. So where is there uncertainty? Will it be hard in the future to stay on the path? And then have policy measures in order to mitigate those effects. The other thing happens, of course, too. There's a lot of innovation and positive things happening in the market with new services that actually can support some of these objectives that you are wanting. So how can you, as fast as possible, support the introduction of those kinds of services and let those markets mature so that you reach your objectives faster than what you may have thought was possible in the beginning?
But the issue, I guess, is that we don't actually know. If we're looking in an event horizon up to 50 years, as you were talking about here, what on earth the world is going to be like in 20, 25 years. I mean, when I started off 30 years ago as a radio journalist, I was carrying around a 1/4-inch tape machine, reel to reel, to do my interviews on. Now I'm just recording this on my iPhone, which of course hadn't even been thought of when I first started off, and that was 30 years ago, and you're looking at 50 years into the future. So when new disruptors come into the market, how are you going to make allowances for that?
I think one of the things in our paradigm shift is also that where we used to say we know the future and we plan for it, now it says we know what we want to achieve and the future will be different, but we have a flexibility there. So this whole model is based on cooperation and on jointly investigating and seeing what reality is in a local market, and from there also change assumptions. So if these electric scooters come to a market, something that we didn't expect 5 years ago, then we can easily adapt this kind of model to see how does that affect the transportation system, and does it help us reach our goals or does it hinder, and from there make decisions a lot more quickly than what we can now. So it's not just changing how we handle uncertainty, but it's increasing the flexibility that we have to adapt to changing path in reality.
Who uses this? Do you sit down with transportation department, or do you sit down with mobility providers or vehicle manufacturers, or do you get everybody in a room together?
Right now we have more differentiated customer base, so they don't typically sit in a room together, but they do want to understand the other's perspective. So we could sit with a public agency that is interested in, we want zero emission transportation system in 2035. How can we achieve that? What will be hinders along the way? Where's their uncertainty? And then they want to anticipate what OEMs will do in generating new products. In another meeting, we can sit with one of those OEMs and think through how do we prioritize between electrification, service providing instead of an ownership model, and CFE investments. And they also want to anticipate, but how trustworthy is the government in their goal setting, and can we assume that they will support the growth of EV market, for example. We're even talking with electrical companies that are struggling with how hard do we invest in charging infrastructure for EVs, and where do we do that? And that also, they need to have some trust in the market, and we can help them see where are there uncertainties, where are there risks, and help them with a solid investment strategy there.
There are 15, I've counted them, executives from around the world with WSP this week at the ITS World Congress. They're presenting loads of papers over the 4 days of the sessions from Tuesday to Friday. One of the people I've been talking to and you can talk to this week is Dirk van Amersfoort, who's Research Director for WSP. And if you want to know more about the tool he's been talking about, it's wsp.com/system dynamics. WSP are one of the sponsors of Talking Transport this week from Singapore. You're listening to Talking Transport with me, Paul Hutton, editor of Smart Highways magazine. Do pick up a copy of the latest issue at one of the 2 media points here in the Suntec Centre. Meanwhile, my friend and colleague Chris Day is with me here in this Singapore. Meanwhile, my friend and colleague Chris Day is here with me in Singapore this week. So if you want to meet up with him and discuss how to increase your visibility in the industry in an amazingly cost-effective way, give him an email, c.day@hgluk.com to set up a meeting. These podcasts are sponsored by AGD, Coda Wireless, Here, Unoptic, PTV, Swarco and WSP.
From the ITS World Congress in Singapore, this is Talking Transport with Paul Hutton.
And as well as the 7 sponsors we have for these Talking Transport podcasts here in Singapore, we've also got our partnerships with our friends at the ITS organisations in America, at Ertico ITS Europe, ITS Australia, ITS Arab, ITS South Africa, and of course ITS UK. And a regular on our Talking Transport podcast is Jenny Martin, Secretary General of ITS UK. And Jenny, here we are in a very warm and humid Singapore. And how does what Singapore deals with as far as traffic is concerned in an island state compare with what we're looking at in the UK?
It's really good to be here, helping to represent the UK with a delegation of probably about another 100 UK representatives here. I think it's really interesting, particularly if you live and work in London or work for London as an ITS professional, because of course there are some really great parallels to do with congestion. A lot of people crammed into a small fine art landmarks, all those sorts of things. So often in Europe, there aren't really any parallels to London, so it's quite interesting to be somewhere where you can really see them. But we're not just here because of London, we're here representing the whole of the UK. It's great for ITS UK to be here as part of the Britain is Great sponsored stand, showcasing lots of different British talents and capabilities. It's also really important for us to be here in Singapore, the Asia Pacific leg of the Congress, because of course historically so much ITS innovation and new implementation has been championed by Japan, by Korea, the Australians. Now very, very strongly for the last 10 years, of course China is now a major player in ITS, and this is one of our main opportunities of interacting with our Chinese colleagues and forging closer ties with them for the future.
Sometimes you find that the Asia Pacific Conference, for example, when we were in Melbourne, it was dominated by local companies. You go to the US and it's dominated by American companies, and they don't travel very far. And there are budgets there that stop people being able to travel and ship large stands and things outside of their home region. I guess this is where ITS societies like ITS UK step up to A, share the expertise of their local area, and B, bring back knowledge for the members back home.
Yes, very much so. We're very aware that for Europeans it's a major commitment in time and in money to be here, and quite a few of our members won't be for that reason. Also, even if a member does attend, it's usually a smaller number of people, the more senior end of the employment scale. So it's very important for us to be here to gather the contacts, the intelligence, the informations, the interests in partnerships, to take back, particularly to younger professionals and more junior staff members and the SME companies who find it hard to be here at all.
And so how can people come and talk to ITS UK?
Find us at the Britain is Great stand. You can't miss the massive Union Jack themed branding. You'll find us there. And of course find us via our website. Just Google ITS United Kingdom, up we come. Or when you're back in the UK, drop us an email.
Jenny Martin is Secretary General of ITS UK, one of the big supporters of these Talking Transport podcasts, the oldest national ITS society in the world, and I might say, as biased as an Englishman, the best. Thanks for your time, Jenny. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Finally, let's have a quick listen back to a key part of Monday's opening ceremony, where Singapore's coordinating Minister for Infrastructure and the Minister for Transport, Khaw Boon Wan, was the guest speaker. He didn't just turn up to give a generic speech, as can so often happen at some events, but really explained how his country approaches introducing ITS.
The adoption of technology should be customized to each country's needs and context. It is against this backdrop that I shall share Singapore's approach very briefly to the development of ITS. As a small and densely populated city, we take transport planning very seriously. We regard an efficient and reliable land transport network as a critical enabler for our economy. We are allergic to traffic congestion, and we do our best to eliminate it so that people and goods can move across the island easily and efficiently. In Singapore, our approach to resolving our public transport challenges comprises two elements. First, we take our time to understand, to clearly define the public transport problem we are trying to address before we try to assess the options. We take a technology-neutral stance. We explore a wide range of technology platforms before shortlisting a few promising solutions based on hard-headed calculations. This preparatory work allows us to be able to choose wisely. Second, we do not rush to be ahead of the curve, to be the first in adopting newfangled technologies, especially for essential services like public transport. What is crucial is that we are plugged in and are fully aware of what new technologies are available out there. This may require us to participate in their development through joint R&D, trials, and pilots. Such participation allows us to influence global standards where we can and to have a more objective assessment of the state of maturity of a new technology. This allows us to better judge the timing for adoption and then to scale up wisely. Let me illustrate this approach by sharing 3 examples. First, tackling traffic jams. Chronic traffic jams are a problem for many cities. They can be detrimental to economic growth. Smooth flowing traffic is a competitive advantage for any city. Back in 1975, we pioneered road pricing by implementing an area licensing scheme to regulate the flow of vehicles within the central business district. It started off with police officers carrying out visual checks for a special decal displayed on car windscreens. A very manual method, hardly high-tech at all. This manual and laborious method improved in 1998 when we upgraded it to the current electronic road pricing system, or better known as ERP. We installed gantries, sensors, and in-vehicle units to allow for the automatic deduction of congestion charges whenever a vehicle passes through an ERP gantry. And after 2 decades, we are now ready to further upgrade the ERP to the next generation of technology based on GNSS, Global National Navigation Satellite System. This will be more efficient and flexible compared to the existing gantry-based system. It will also provide a platform for us to deliver the next generation traffic light system and new apps, including real-time traffic alerts. These will further optimize our road network so that the buses, trucks, and cars can all enjoy smoother journeys. The upsides of ITS are compelling. We must, however, be aware of their downsides. Let me just highlight 2 critical risks. First, while technology can transform societies, it can also be divisive. As we pursue new transport and intelligent technologies, we must not allow a divide to emerge between the technologically savvy and the vast majority who may not yet be technology ready. Many may even find the new technology disrupting their livelihood when they find their skills losing relevance. Another downside risk is cybersecurity. As we make our transport systems more intelligent, we are also introducing new vulnerabilities such as cyber attacks, which can compromise personal data or worse, public safety. Last week in Singapore, we announced our 5G development plan. I see great potential to leverage 5G in enhancing urban mobility by supporting the growth of autonomous vehicles. In addition, I see 5G supporting other sectors like the future Tuas seaport, where we are building a highly automated new generation port to leverage on the new digital economy. I mentioned earlier in my speech that generally we do not rush to embrace new technologies for essential public services. However, for infrastructure like 5G, we do not hesitate to be among the first adopters. The government will play a crucial role in supporting 5G trials and co-invest with the industry to develop new use cases for enterprises and for consumers. This will sharpen Singapore's competitive edge. Let me conclude. No country can successfully develop ITS without international cooperation. For instance, in areas such as the harmonization of standards. And we can also shorten the learning curve through frequent exchanges of best practices. It is therefore important that we continue to engage one another at platforms like the World Congress. And I look forward to learning from all of you over the next few days. And collectively, I think we can build a better world for our people. please enjoy the Congress and Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
The whole of the opening ceremony will soon be on the World Congress website, I'm told, and I'll share the link when it's available. So that's it for Tuesday's podcast from the ITS World Congress here in Singapore. Thanks again to our sponsors AGD Systems, Coda Wireless, HERE, Genoptic, PTV, Swarco and WSP for their support. And join me tomorrow for a look ahead to Wednesday at the Suntec Centre.
Talking Transport is produced and presented by Paul Hutton for the Transport Network suite of products.